the major criticisms and critiques of astrology that I always hear is that you cannot reduce people to their zodiac sign. And essentially, that's what sun sign astrology kind of does, especially when you're just looking at your horoscope, for example, right? But of course, astrology has an answer to that. Astrology is not about reducing everyone to certain characteristics. There are levels to this shit, literally. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the levels to Taurus and how Taurus has a major theme, but there are different subdivisions within Taurus that can account for the fact that not every Taurus is the same. All right. So, if you want to know more about the different archetypes of Taurus and perhaps how those archetypes play out in your life, stick around. You definitely don't want to miss this. Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. If you're new around here, hi, hello, and welcome. My name is Mel. I'm a professional astrologer and I'm the founder of Divine Feminine Works, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. So if you're new, welcome. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So today's video is all about the different archetypes of Taurus. Now, there happen to be three. As a matter of fact, every zodiac sign can be distilled, let me not say distilled. Every zodiac sign can be separated into three different archetypes. Now, at the outset, what I want to say is that there are different schools of thought when it comes to astrology. In some schools of thought, there are more than three subdivisions. In others, there are less, right? I am just giving you my interpretation or how I use astrology for myself and how I help clients. And we don't need to get into all of the technical jargon, but for all intents and purposes, the way that I practice astrology, there is an overarching zodiac sign. And then under that are what are called decans, okay? And that basically divides each zodiac sign into three equal archetypes. And those subdivisions are really they're based on the degrees, right? So when you look at a natal chart, when you look at the natal chart wheel, the wheel is divided into 12 parts, right? Those are the houses, and each house is governed by a sign. Within each house is 30 degrees, hence why there are three equal subdivisions. And again, those subdivisions are called decans, and each decan is ruled by a different planet. So you may already be familiar with planetary rulers, right? Every zodiac sign is ruled by a planet. But then further, that subdivision, each subdivision is ruled by a planet as well. Now, don't fret. You don't need to know the subdivision rulers and all of that stuff. This video is just meant for you to identify which archetype you are. And if you are not a Taurus, this video isn't irrelevant to you. I will be doing this as a series, so each sign will get their own video, but this will get you sort of acclimated to the more psychological side of astrology, which is what I focus on. Okay, this is about understanding archetypes and patterns, and decans is definitely something that helps us do that. Now, in traditional astrology, I love how they call decans faces. So it's like the same person, but different facets, different faces. And whichever subdivision you fall into can give you more information on how you express that energy, which is why no Taurus, every Taurus isn't the same because maybe their sun falls in the first subdivision or decan of Taurus. And so they would express their Taurus energy differently than someone else whose sun may be in the last subdivision of Taurus. All you need to know here is that there are three subdivisions which can make the same zodiac sign express itself in three different ways. All right. So without further ado, let's move into the decans for Taurus. Now, the first thing that I want to emphasize before we get into the decans themselves is Taurus energy generally, right? Now, Taurus has several characteristics, right? It's associated with comfort, with materialism, with being stubborn, with being fixed, right? But above all else, the energy of Taurus is centered around stability. Taurus is the foundation builder at its core because it values stability above all else. So everything that Taurus does, Whether that planet is in the first, second, or third decan of Taurus is centered around stability, but it's how that stability is expressed that makes the different decans of Taurus different. Okay, so let's talk about the first decan of Taurus. This is relevant to you if you have planets in Taurus between 0 degrees and 9 degrees. This decan of Taurus is ruled by Venus. And this archetype is what I like to call the sensualist. This decan of Taurus is really perhaps the energy of Taurus that most of us are familiar with. The Venusian side of Taurus, if you will, right? It's about beauty, sensuality, comfort, luxury, all of the baseline characteristics that we know about Taurus is typically expressed by this first decan of Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. And Venus is the ruler of Taurus generally. So this decan of Taurus is perhaps the most Taurus of the Taurians. Okay. This particular decan of Taurus is all about pleasure, aesthetics, comfort, beauty, sensuality, softness, embodiment, and most importantly, connection to the physical world. That's why I call this archetype the sensualist, because it is very much concerned about the five senses, right? So experiencing the world viscerally is really what this decan is about. This decan of Taurus establishes stability through comfort, beauty, pleasure, and more importantly, emotional consistency. Okay. This decan of Taurus wants to feel good. Their stability relies on them feeling good consistently. Okay. And that's why this decan of Taurus wants comfort, may really be into comfort food, may really be into luxury and amassing material possessions, because feeling good is how this Taurus experiences and expresses stability. Okay, so this is the decan of Taurus that has to do with music, with beauty, beauty products, material possessions, and things of that nature as well. All right, and also softness, because when you think of Venus, you think of softness, right? But of course, we can't talk about all the seemingly positive things without talking about the shadow side. And so the shadow side of this first decan of Taurus is avoidance, stagnation, overindulgence, wanting to stay comfortable at the risk of growth. So when you think about extreme materialism, overindulgence, people who only want to stay in their comfort zone because comfort is how they derive and express stability, you're definitely thinking about, or you're definitely examining the shadow side of that first decan of Taurus, right? Which is again ruled by Venus. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that you don't just have to have your sun here. If you have your sun here, we're directly talking about your identity, right? And your personality. But you could have any planets in the first or any of the decans of Taurus, and this information would still apply. All right. So I definitely want you to keep that in mind as well. So the challenge here for sort of Taurus and the first decan of Taurus is realizing that comfort and growth are not always the same thing. And without the desire for growth, without getting out of your comfort zone, you will stay stagnant. And as comfortable as that may feel, that stagnation will feel probably 10 times worse. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to that first decan of, I was about to say Virgo, that first decan of Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. So now let's move on to the second decan of Taurus, which is ruled by Mercury. And this is where things get interesting, because now we're getting to see a nuanced expression of Taurus. The first decan of Taurus ruled by Venus is very Taurus, the Taurus that we've come to know. But when we talk about the second decan of Taurus, which is ruled by Mercury, now we get into the air of Earth. Think of it this way. Venus is, or at least Venus expressed in Taurus, is the earth of Earth. Now we are in the air of Earth, which is the second decan of Taurus, which is ruled by Mercury. This is the decan of Taurus that stabilizes itself through understanding and logic. Okay. So this is about structure, understanding, planning, systems, predictability, and most importantly, mental clarity. Okay. So whereas the first decan of Taurus wants to feel good, the second decan of Taurus wants it to make sense. right? I think I mentioned in one of my previous Taurus videos that Taurus is notoriously known for being lazy, right? Like they're immovable, stubborn, even. But I said the Taurus needs things to make sense to move. Taurus isn't going to expend energy needlessly. And this can definitely speak to this second decan of Taurus, which is ruled by Mercury. It's like, make it make sense. And then I'll move. And then I'll build, right? This Taurus is notorious for thinking long term. Because again, the overarching theme of Taurus is stability. So it's like the second decan of Taurus, ruled by Mercury, will always fix its mind toward stability and even longevity. Okay. So when we're talking about this decan of Taurus, if you have planets here, you may tend to be observant, strategic, discerning, mentally disciplined, slow to trust, careful with decisions, and practical in the way that they build their lives, or you build your life, I should say. So there's very much this element of being intentional about your stability and your security. The first thing that came to mind when I was preparing for this, when it comes to this decan of Taurus, it's like people who are maybe almost obsessed with money, amassing money, generational wealth even, right? People who always want their bank account fat and padded and who are almost obsessed about it, that can really speak to the second decan of Taurus, which is again ruled by Mercury. So these are people who will research before committing. They value competency and intelligence. They notice inconsistencies quickly. They think in terms of sustainability, especially in the long run, and they create routines that help them feel grounded. Now, again, this doesn't mean that you only have your sun in this deck. And if you have any planets, particularly the personal planets, this would definitely apply to you. All right. And I forgot to say that this decan of Taurus is from 10 degrees of Taurus to 19 degrees of Taurus. All right. This decan of Taurus is very much concerned with preparation, almost exclusively and almost obsessively. Because again, your mental stability is of utmost importance. And part of that mental stability often includes preparation. And again, Taurus is a fixed sign, so that preparation is what can maintain stability. Now, Mercury is a fast moving planet. And so, in the second decan of Taurus, it gives a little speed to an otherwise kind of slow energy. This would be mental speed, not necessarily, physical speed, right? But it gets your mind going and you get very much concerned with preparation. So when it comes to this second decan of Taurus, it's like attention, focus, mental discipline, productivity, overthinking, and maybe even hyper optimization are very much within the fabric of your being. All right. So it gives this little mental edge and this mental acuity to a very earth sign, stable sign like Taurus. Now, of course, we have to talk about the shadow side. So the shadow side of the second decan of Mercury is being mentally stubborn, conservative in your thinking without really allowing for new thoughts to change your perception of things. You're trapped in routines, you're rigid, perhaps you're overly controlling. You may also have analysis paralysis because you're so focused on preparation that that's where all of your energy goes, and it doesn't leave you any room to actually do the thing that you're thinking so much about, right? You can be resistant to unpredictability. And at a time like this, when Uranus is in Gemini, yeah, that could be really difficult. And that could be a very jarring sort of thing for you at this time. And you may be quite emotionally detached in favor of logic. So rather than feeling, which is a part of Taurus energy, you're really just stuck in your head. And again, it's like things have to make sense for you to actually do the thing. Okay. So, I call this architect, I call this archetype the architect, right? Because it's all about that mental acuity, that focus, and architecting your future pretty much through preparation. Okay, so the architect can become so focused on controlling uncertainty that they stop allowing life to surprise them. So there could be a lot of mental rigidity here, okay? But the thing is, you're great for architecting the future. You're great for thinking ahead in preparation. Just leave a little room for the universe to throw you a curveball every now and then, okay? Now, let's say you're hearing all this and you're like, oh, wow, maybe you have a Taurus stellium, meaning that you have a whole bunch of planets in Taurus, which could span all three of these decans. Or maybe you have a personal planet in Taurus, like your sun, your moon, your Venus, even, right? And you're like, okay, I really want to know what this means for me. I really want to understand this planet that you're talking about right now that I feel like I really resonate with. Well, if you want to know how to read any placement in your natal chart, then you're going to want to get astrology translated. All right. This is my really short video training that helps you understand any planet in your natal chart, any placement in your natal chart in 25 minutes or less. All right. It's super comprehensive, but super concise so that you could look at any placement in your natal chart and delineate it using my specific formula. All right. So it's a 25-minute video training with an accompanying PDF guide so you can know exactly what the placement means and, more importantly, how it fits within the larger system of your natal chart. It's only 33 bucks. It's super quick in order to help you get going, especially if you're new to astrology, or even if you're not so new, but you want to know your natal chart in a way that makes sense to you and in a way that you could readily use to change your life experience. All right. So if you're interested in getting astrology translated, it is linked in the description box below as well as tagged to this video. I would definitely get it, not because I made it, but because I remember when I first got my natal chart and I was like, okay, it's like I felt like I was putting everything together in pieces. I was getting the information here, there, and everywhere. This gives you all of the information in one place. You could watch the video training over and over again, but honestly, after the first watch, you'll probably have a pretty good idea of how to read the placement. Again, it's using my proprietary formula that makes it super easy and simple. Plus, you'll also get some ongoing practice so that you could put it to practice and really understand your chart like you never have before. So again, get that if you are interested. Okay, so now let's move on to the final decan of Taurus, which is ruled by Saturn. Okay, and so this would be if you have any planets between 20 and 29 degrees of Taurus, okay? The second is ruled by Saturn, and I call this archetype the sovereign. This is sort of the master of Taurus energy, the master of the physical, right? When I think about this decan, if you are familiar with tarot, I think of the King of Pentacles. This is the master of the physical, right? Now, the thing about Saturn ruling this decan of Taurus is that it isn't just about mastery, it's about discipline and it's about diligent hard work. Now, if you notice something, all of the characteristics across all of these decans really contribute to the overall energy of Taurus generally, because Taurus is a fixed earth sign, right? And oftentimes, Taurus gets the connotation of building the foundation, right? This directly speaks to this third decan of Taurus, which is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is all about diligent work, it's about rote work. It's about creating a foundation, something that will endure. So, when it comes to stability, as seen through the lens of the sovereign, which is ruled by Saturn in this third decan of Taurus, it's about stability that will endure. You're not building something just for right now. You're building something that will stand the test of time. And you do that by mastering the physical. Okay. This energy is powerful, it's grounded, and more importantly, it's mature. So the stability that is gained through this third decan of Taurus has a lot to do with maturity, and that maturity typically comes from experience, right? It's about thinking about things in a long-term way, right? Which allows whatever you're building to endure and to stand the test of time. In this decan, there's also a certain level of responsibility, right? So if you have planets in this decan, you may feel this sense of responsibility or even obligation that sort of drives what you do. It drives your sort of concept of stability as seen through working hard and building a foundation. right? More importantly, I'll say that if you have planets in this third decan of Taurus, it's all about delayed gratification. And I think that also speaks to maturity, like I was saying before. You know that the work you put in now is not necessarily going to yield results right now. They're going to yield results in the future, but you're still willing to do the work regardless. Right. I think one of the phrases that comes to mind is, especially when it comes to discipline, you're willing to put in the work right now, even though you don't feel like doing the work right now, because you know that by putting in the work right now, you'll have something later. Now, depending on what planet or planets you have in this third decan of Taurus, it'll determine what we're talking about. So if you have like your Venus, right, in Taurus, but it's in the final decan of Taurus, this is about someone who may be aggressively saving, aggressively investing, always thinking about the future, always saving for a rainy day, right? Maybe you've got your Mercury in the third decan of Taurus. So it's really about, not only mental discipline, but you're always thinking about, the future. You're always thinking long term. You're like, okay, the decisions and thoughts I have now are going to affect me in the long term. So I need to be discerning and I need to be responsible. This decan also speaks to a certain level of authority. So depending on the planets you have here, you may be an authority on something that is very Taurus, right? Or authority plays an important part in the expression of that planet for you. But either way, when it comes to this second of Taurus, I call it the sovereign because it has mastered, it has grown, and it's ultimately hella responsible and very much concerned with obligation and longevity. Okay. So, of course, we have to talk about the shadow side. And here, the shadow side can be hyper controlling, right? Because that rigidity that Saturn is known for is expressed in Taurus. And so when it comes to stability, it's stability at all costs. I don't care. I'm not going to be reckless in the least. I'm not going to go out of my comfort zone. I'm not going to do anything different outside of my routine. It could be emotionally suppressive. This sort of energy, as expressed in this third decan, doesn't necessarily leave room for a lot of emotion. It's all about the strict routine. It's all about the future. Emotions can kind of get in the way of that. So you can suppress those emotions that may come up when dealing with things that you're building or things that you're doing, right? This is the workaholic Decan. I almost forgot what I was talking about. This is the workaholic Decan. So this is working obsessively and really delaying everything for the future, right? This is sort of the classic, I'm going to work hard and then wait for retirement kind of energy or kind of expression of this energy, right? You need to stop and sort of borrow that energy from the sensualist decan, which is all about feeling good and being sensual. If you can tap into that, that would help to mitigate that rigidity and sort of putting everything off till retirement, until some future date when things finally come to fruition. This could also be scarcity mentality if you're not careful. I mean, I always like to call Saturn energy kind of the Debbie Downer energy. It can be hyper realistic and very much, well, this could go wrong, that could go wrong, that kind of thing. And so you could really be tapped into scarcity mentality because Taurus is an earth sign and Taurus is concerned with the five senses and material things. But with Saturn in this decan, you may always be thinking about what you don't have. You may desire things, but you don't have them. You don't have the money for them, right? So that could really lend itself to a scarce mentality. So you have to be very, very cognizant of that, right? But overall, when it comes to this third decan of Taurus, which is ruled by Saturn, the sovereign often learns very early that nothing that is valuable or nothing that lasts or stands the test of time is built overnight. So this particular archetype, this decan, is in it for the long haul. All right. So now I want to talk about Scorpio. And you may be wondering, Mel, we're talking about Taurus. Why are we talking about Scorpio? Well, Scorpio and Taurus are linked. They're known as sister signs, and you'll see them, they're opposite ends on either side of the astrological wheel. Now, every sign has a sister sign, and both signs share certain characteristics. They're just flip sides of the same coin. Now, when it comes to Taurus and Scorpio, Taurus is stability, But Scorpio is also, they just express them differently. So Taurus preserves, which you can think of stability, right? Taurus endures. But when it comes to Scorpio, Scorpio transforms, and Scorpio lets you know that the only thing constant is change. And Taurus is like the only thing that's constant is consistency. So flip sides of the same coin. So whenever you're talking about Taurus, you kind of have to talk about Scorpio because when you look at them together, that's when you get the fullest picture. Now, remember, I said this actually during the second decan of Taurus, ruled by Mercury. It's like obsessive thinking, right? That is indicative of that Scorpio obsession, that Scorpio transformation inherent in the energy of Taurus. Okay. Now, Taurus asks, how do I create stability? And kind of do it in a somewhat obsessive sort of way because stability is what you are obsessed with. When we talk about Scorpio, we're talking about obsession with change. With Taurus, we're talking about obsession with stability. So I want to weave that in so you get the full picture. And you do this with every sign. Every sign has a sister sign, and the characteristics of that sister sign are just the flip side of the same coin. All right, so keep that in mind. All right, it's a little tidbit of information for you there. All right, Manos, that's pretty much all I've got for you for this video on the 3 decans of Taurus. And don't worry, I will be doing every sign over the course of whenever. Every season, whenever the sun moves into a new sign, you will always get a video just like this. So if that is the case, set notifications, subscribe, tell your friends about all of this so that you can, well, definitely set notifications so you'll never miss when I do drop the video for the sign that you are interested in. All right. So now sound off. Which Taurus are you? Are you the sensualist? First decan of Taurus ruled by Venus. Are you the architect? Second decan of Taurus ruled by Mercury? Or are you the sovereign? Third decan of Taurus ruled by Saturn. Sound off in the comments and let me know below. And find your fellow Taurians, especially since we are now in Taurus season. This is all about you, and this is relevant right now. All right, my loves, thank you so much for tuning into this video. I sincerely hope that you were able to get at least one important piece of information that you found valuable, useful, informative, or just an interesting fact at the very least. All right. And if that is the case, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, share this video with a fellow Taurian who would love to know this information. They would love to identify themselves with this information. All right. And also, if you're watching this on mobile, if you really like this video, don't forget to press that hype button. It lets YouTube know that you like this video, and it'll also disseminate it to other people who may like this video as well. And if you like this content, and if you want even more of this content, then you will definitely want to subscribe to the channel, right? My channel membership is called The Inner Orbit. You get early access to videos plus members only videos and live streams. All right. It gives you a bonus when it comes to this kind of content, and it also helps support the channel so I can continue bringing this content to you and bringing you more. All right. So if you want to join, you can just click the join button on desktop, or you can hit the link in the description box below. All right, my loves, thank you so much for tuning in. I sincerely appreciate you, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.